welcome to part 3, the final instalment of cheap old road bike into fashionable Fixie, or something along those lines anyway. First up though, let's recap what we've done.
Damn it! Looks like I'm a bit behind the times here. I mean, I was asked in the comments, I don't know, whenever it was, could I build a fixed gear? I think it was actually on the Viking single speed. Could I build a fixed gear, a Fixie, out of a vintage bike and show how it's done? Looks like GCN Tech has beat me to it as I'm doing this. This was originally a £2 buy, I think it was. It was spray painted orange. No, it wasn't even spray painted, it was hand painted orange. It was a project that someone had gave up on. It didn't have the seat post or the saddle. It came with road bars, road brake levers and the front brake and a rear wheel, and that's it. It was missing its crankset, it was missing a front wheel, missing a rear brake and missing a seat post and saddle. And over the last couple of weeks I've stripped it back. As you know, started to use the old flamethrower method. We're using a blowtorch. That didn't really work on the cheap paint. Then I realised that the cheap paint came off super easy with thinners, even cheap thinners. So I used that and stripped the whole frame down over a week maybe. Polished it all up with wire wool to get it nice and shining, and this is how it looks now. I've put this chrome stem back in, 25.4mm, which is pretty much standard size, and just put this Vuelta saddle that came on a bike I've recently bought, and that kind of goes well with the forks. And the fork I actually spray painted blue. It was originally chrome. It's not the original one. It's actually got a cut top on it, and it says made in Taiwan on it. It's smaller dropouts, so they needed a bit of work to get in. And yeah, cut the lamp bracket off, sanded it all down, spray painted the blue to try and match the saddle, but the colour came out a little bit lighter, so there's a slight mismatch there. Apart from that, it's about ready to go. I've swapped the drop bars for flat bars to make it a bit more rideable, but now I can, I guess, begin to talk through how I would convert this into a Fixie. So yeah, I guess let's begin. First things first, let's go and have a look at the dropouts, because we're going to more than likely be wanting a new wheel set. In fact, you're definitely going to need a new wheel set, because if you're taking off the 5-speed block, the 6-speed block or whatever, it's not going to allow you to fit the the fixed cog and the lock ring, because it needs that fixed cog and lock ring to work. So first thing, it's got the horizontal dropouts, which enables you to pull the wheel back and create the chain tension. Vertical dropouts are not really going to work with this. You might be able to get it with like half links and things like that, but to keep the tension on it, it's so easy to work with these. If you have got the rear facing dropouts, it's already a track frame, so it's already built for single speed or fixed gear use. Second thing with the dropouts, old vintage bikes like this, they normally come in something like, oh no, my battery's run out. Normally come in something like 125mm spacing, which is very close already to what a fixed rear wheel would be. So these rear dropouts are 120mm, perfect, good size for it. A fixed rear wheel is likely to be sort of 110, so we can always add 5mm worth of washers each side. They're not going to be quick release, so they have to be a bolted axle. Quick release isn't going to provide you enough grip, and you need to make sure they've got the serrated lock nuts on there, the track nuts, because it needs to actually bite in to get the grip. If they are smooth, if they are worn, it's not going to hold this rear wheel in place. So what I found, boom, I've bought an entirely new wheel set off eBay. Came with tyres, came with fixed and freewheel. Fixed this side, freewheel the other side. Both front and rear with tyres, like I said, and tubes. Nice cheap wheel set, and that cost me about £60. 60 to 70, I can't remember. I used a discount code and got it. But there is a bit of slack in there, so I am going to have to pack this out. I'm going to put 5mm worth of washers each side, and I can do that. And this should be as simple as grabbing your cone spanners, grabbing your other spanner, just cracking off this lock nut, which is quite tight actually. There we go. And I'm going to want to add a 5mm spacer of some sort underneath, whether that is with, I don't know, whether you've got another one of these actually, that would be good. Another one of these lock nuts, that would be nice to put on, or just washers that you've got lying around, they'll work. So I've got 5mm worth of washers here. They can just slot over there. Make sure the serrated side is top side. Wind that back down and tighten it back up. And that's one side done. Now 5mm on the other side should give me 120 more spacing, and then it will fit perfectly inside my frame. Now before that goes back in the bike, I need to work out the chain line, because that is going to determine my bottom bracket length, the spindle length on the bottom bracket, and keeping the chain line straight is pretty important for chain wear, chain retention, and seeing as we already know one part of the figure, which is 120mm, the dropout width, the overlock nut diameter, the overlock nut dimension. Okay, the only dimension we need now is the dimension from the cog to the lock nut, and what I've done is just clamp my caliper that has run out of battery in there. So I'm going to use a tape measure, just measure from the centre of the cog to the bottom of the caliper, and that's about 20mm, give or take. So that dimension is going to mean that we have a 40mm chain line, because we're going to take that measurement, we're going to take the centre line of the overlock nut dimension, the OLD, so that's 120 divided by 2 is 60. Take away the 20mm difference here, and that gives us 40mm, so 40mm from the centre of the bike to the chain line. So let's talk about bottom brackets and cranksets. It's not entirely necessary to go buying new bottom brackets and cranksets just for this. If you want to keep it cheap, you can reuse your old one, your old cup and cone. You can reuse your old crankset. It's fine. You can just take one of the rings off and use it that way if it's a double. However, there is a mass abundance of single speed fixed gear cranksets on the market. This one I picked up for a whole, I think it was £15 for this cheap crankset. Who knows how good it's going to be. It was cheap, but there are plenty of others on the market. On my first fixed gear I had a strong light crankset, and that actually came with details of chain line and what bottom brackets to use, which is so useful. So a lot of the good cranksets will say to get this side chain line you need to use this length bottom bracket. Unfortunately for me, mine didn't, so I'm going to have to experiment, and I'm going to continue using this cup and cone because it's easy to swap out the axles. If you don't have a rally and you're blessed with 24 threads per inch bottom bracket, you can upgrade this as well to a cartridge, and just make sure you get the right length for that. Unfortunately I don't know a way to guesstimate that to start with. Okay, so this is where the experimenting comes in. To get this right chain line, it might mean taking this crankset on and off a couple of times. I've dug out my spare, well, first off I've loaded both cups, this fixed side and the adjustable side that's off, with grease and with the 1/4 inch bearings that are needed. And I've dug out a axle here. It's a Shimano 113mm axle, which is in the road range. It's in the road range, so it should give a pretty decent chain line. But it might, yeah, it might work. It might work. 40mm isn't too bad of a chain line. So let's try it. We've got to slot this carefully in there. I'm going to get this side on. Right, that's in. It's not adjusted yet, but I just want to see what the chain line is going to be. BB Crankset on. Okay, and we're going to be measuring from the centre of the down tube to the centre of this ring. Sorry, I just completely realised I didn't even check then to see if it was in shot. Chain line measured from the centre of the down tube to the centre of the ring here, and I know it's not fixed on, so it might pull in a little bit more, but we've got just about 50mm there. Now what I can do with that, I can put in a smaller axle. It would have to be, geez, that would have to be a short axle, because this is 113mm at the moment, so I'd have to go, I need to bring that in 10mm, and normally they're equal, so I'd have to go to 103, which I don't think is really going to work there. So my best bet is to take off this chain ring, switch that to the other side of the spider, which is doable, that's fine, and we'll measure it from there. I would also just going to check my spares to see if I've got a 110mm axle, because that would be also good, just to bring it in a bit more, and that should bring it into the 40mm. So this is what I'd always recommend going for a crankset with a removable chainring. Not only can you change the ratio, but you can flip it over. And you're going to need something like this. It's the Parks CW2 chain ring spanner, which just fits in there and helps you undo them, along with, I believe it's 5mm. Yeah, 5mm. 1 year later, that's off, and we can move this to the back like so. Actually, you need to make sure that is under the crank arm, that little notch. Oh no, this is going to be a nightmare. Okay, so we'll do these up tight now, and then get them on. Get the crankset on. Okay, so one side. Two sides. And measure the chain line. Okay. So chain line was about 50mm before, now it's about 44mm, so we're 4mm out, which is why I say 110mm bottom bracket would be beneficial, would be the best probably, maybe even 108 just to bring it in, because it's got 113 at the moment, but yeah, that's not too bad, that chain line is acceptable. Okay, with the crankset on, you could say the last thing to do is fit the chain and then you're done. I don't think it is though, I don't think it is. Because I personally do think you need a brake. So we will put a brake on, just a front brake, and it should make all the difference. But for now, chain. It will probably be more than likely 99.9% of the times a 1/8 inch chain. Various makes and models you can buy. This one comes with a quick link tool, but you will have to cut it down to size more than likely. So that goes on. Remember, this wheel is in its maximum position, maximum pulled back into the dropouts, I should say. And remember, keep your fingers away. Oh shit. Because this is fixed gear now, it's just going to want to pull and pull round if the wheel keeps on spinning. So watch your fingers, because they will get sucked up into the cog at the rear or the freewheel at the crankset at the front. So I reckon if my inner link is there and my other inner link is there, that's going to be too slack for this. So if I take it off at this inner link, we can bring the front wheel forward slightly, which we're going to have to do to create the tension, and then connect it up. So I'm going to take it off at this particular link. Okay, just going to break it there. I'm just going to drape this back on for now. I'm not going to connect it up or anything to the freewheel, because I'm not going to be able to fit it freewheel for the cog, because I'm not going to be able to put it on. Get my little quick link setup out. It's one of these again. There we go, clipped into place. That chain is one piece now, so 15mm spanner again. Bring the rear wheel forwards. Put your chain on. And if we've measured it right, there we go, plenty. It's not going to sit all the way back in the dropout. Cool, that's still in. But we're going to have to pull it back until we've got tension in this chain. And this is where the serrated edges of both the lock nut and the track nut of the rear wheel come into play, because we're going to need this to stay firm, and that is going to be too loose. Right. That should be good. Okay, we're all connected up. The drivetrain is good to go. Now, it's time for personal preference here. Some may say this is finished. Once you've converted your wheels and converted your drivetrain to running fixed, you don't need a brake, because the rear wheel is your brake. But for me, I think you should always run a front brake if you're riding on the streets. It's just going to add in that extra layer of safety, that extra layer of security, and should the chain decide to snap or it jump off from, say, let's say a pedal strike, you're going to be able to stop safely, because if you lose that chain, you're not stopping. So I've just cleaned up this Feynman that came with the bike. It's going to go back on there. Got a flat bar lever to connect it to. But I personally think you should always ride with a front brake if you're riding fixed. That's just me though. I know many people will disagree. And up top, sorry I keep on knocking it, and up top I need a brake lever, so I've just got this Shimano Ultra one, some new grips, do that up. Let's add another bit of colour with some yellow brake cable, so that's just going to go there, that's all we need. So there we go, one cheap fixed gear build, Fixie build out of a vintage bike. Yeah, come together quite well. Cheap parts are cheap, obviously, you buy quality. Though that crankset has paint sprayed over all the threads that you might need, so just beware of cheap, and always double check the cogs on the rear wheel, like the freewheel and the cog, because they're not always done up, so double check them before you actually go riding. But that is transformed. Hopefully that's answered the question, like how do you convert your vintage bike into a fixed gear. Buy yourself at least a new rear wheel, that's what you'll need, at least a new rear wheel, a matching pair if you can afford it. You'll need a 1/8 inch chain to go on the new setup. A crankset and bottom bracket to match would be nice, but you can work with your old bottom bracket and just adjust the spindle size with a new spindle, and buy a new crank. And you can work with your old crankset, just moving the rings around on the double, that's not a problem. And I personally say keep the front brake, but you know, that's up to you, how you ride. But it is a really simple conversion, just making sure, the only thing you need to make sure of is just to check the chain line, check the chain line works. The chain line is the important thing here, so mine was 40mm on the rear, I got it as close as I could on the front to that 40mm, and you know, it rides without any ticking noises, which would indicate a chain line that is pretty far off, let's just say. So that should be ready to ride now, and you know, it should be a nice little cruiser. I've put the clipped pedals on there for now. I might see how they go. I've not rode with clipped and fixed before, it's normally straps, but you do want to, you would want to go for something that can lock your feet to it, so you can use all that force from the fixed wheel and even slow yourself down with the fixed rear wheel. The straps do help that a lot, so clipping should work as well, hopefully we'll see. But I'll take it for a quick spin and see how she rides. But that is a bare metal fixed gear conversion of a vintage road bike, now set up for, I guess, just cruising around town, being all hipster, hanging out in coffee shops and all that sort of jazz. So hope this little build was useful, entertaining and all that jazz, and if you want to see more content like this, subscribe for more.